Hi, first graders. So I'd like to go through two more different kinds of animals this week. Now, if you remember last week, we talked about fish and birds, and we talked about the 4 Bs, which are body covering, how they breathe, their body temperature, and how they have babies. Now, first, I'd like to talk about reptiles. And this is a kind of reptile. A turtle is a reptile. Now, what are the 4 Bs with a reptile? Well, reptiles, their body covering is dry scales. So a snake is also a reptile, and you might think a snake is slippery, but actually it has dry scales, as does a turtle. So their body covering is dry scales. They breathe with lungs, just like we do and just like birds do. And they lay eggs, but their eggs are with rubbery shells. And the easiest way to remember that is reptile starts with an R, and then they lay eggs, rubbery like eggs. And they lay their eggs on land. And so those are and they're cold-blooded. Now, if you remember, cold-blooded means that whatever temperature they are living in, that's the temperature of their body. They're cold-blooded. So their body temperature changes to whatever their surrounding is. Now, a couple other facts. They live on land and some spend time in water. And they usually hibernate in cold weather. And the reptiles that live in Michigan often hibernate deep down into the mud and under the ground. All right, so now amphibians. These are the crazy ones. We have such a great God and such an amazing creator. Amphibians, it has the PH sound. Amphibians, well, let's go through their 4 Bs. They are covered with moist skin, and I kind of remember that because moist amphibians have moist skin. So not dry scales like a reptile, but moist skin. Now, how do they breathe? This is what's so interesting. When they're young, they breathe with gills, and when they're adults, they breathe with lungs. So, for an example, a frog comes from eggs without shells laid in water, so they can swim in water when they're a tadpole, but then as they grow lungs, and then they need to breathe above the water. And then some other facts. When they're young, they live in water. Adults live on land and spend time in the water. They usually hibernate in cold weather. So our frogs, you've maybe been hearing the spring peepers out at night. I've been hearing them. They almost sound like a bird at night, but they were hibernating all winter, and then they came out and we can hear them. So those are the amphibians. So I'd like to quickly do a review. Body covering of a fish is slimy scales. Birds, feathers. Reptiles, dry scales. Amphibians, moist skin. Now, how do they breathe? Fish breathe with gills. Birds breathe with lungs. Reptiles breathe with lungs. Amphibians breathe with gills first and then lungs later. Now, what about cold-blooded and warm-blooded? Most of them are cold-blooded. Let's take a look. Fish are cold-blooded. Birds are warm-blooded. Reptiles, cold-blooded. Amphibians, cold-blooded. And then one more. How do they have babies? Fish have eggs without shells in water. Birds have brittle shells laid in a nest on land. Eggs with rubbery shells are reptiles. And then eggs without shells are amphibians. All right, I'd like you to keep working on your packet with your mom and dad. I know there's a lot of writing. Just do a little bit each day and enjoy learning about all of these different kinds of animals. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.